Hi everyone, Ms. Pellegrino here. In this video, we're going to take a look at estimating decimal products. This is page 134 in your math book if you'd like to follow along. Before we get too far with this, let's do a little bit of review. Let's think back to the last time we did estimation. Remember that estimation means getting an answer that's about correct. We usually do this by rounding before we solve the problem. I want you to pause the video and estimate these following problems. You can use a whiteboard or a piece of scratch paper. Go ahead and give it a shot. All done? Let's take a look. Sometimes with estimating, you can get slightly different answers depending on how you solve the problem. However, as long as your answer is about close to the to the exact answer, your estimate is good. So let's take a look at some common ways to estimate these problems. In this first one, 23 times 187, you might have just rounded each number to the greatest place value. So 23 rounds to 20, and 187 rounds to 200. So instead of multiplying 23 times 187, you just end up with 20 times 200. 2 times 2 gives you 4, and then we need 1, 2, 3 zeros on our answer. So about 4,000. We can do the same thing to this problem here. 421 will round to 400, and 62 will round to 60. So we end up with 400 times 60. 4 times 6 gives us 24, and we need 1, 2, 3 zeros. So 421 times 62 would be about 24,000. This last problem was addition, and it used decimals, so a little bit different here. For this problem, it would probably make sense for us to just round to the nearest whole number. So 2 3/10 rounded to the nearest whole number, or the nearest 1, would mean we have 2. Now 45 82 hundredths would round to nearest whole number. Let's round that to that 1's place there, meaning we'd round to 46, and we'd end up with 2 plus 46 to give us 48. Now you might have chosen to round 45 82 hundredths to the nearest 10 instead of the nearest 1, in which case you would have ended up with 2 plus 50, with an answer of 52. That still works because your answer is still close to what the exact answer would be. So we used rounding to figure out numbers that were about close to our actual numbers, and then we added or multiplied to get our final answers. Let's use those same steps to estimate decimal products. This is the example from page 134 in your book. It reads, a wedding planner needs to buy 16 pounds of sliced cheddar cheese. About how much will the cheese cost? Did you catch any key words in that problem there? Pause the video and look back. Do you see any key words? If you picked out this word here, well done. When you see about, remember that that's a sign that you need to estimate. So we know we're estimating this problem. We know that this wedding planner is buying 16 pounds of cheese. And how much does each pound of cheese cost? Do you see that here on the problem? Hopefully you see over here, our little caption tells us that cheese is $2.15 per pound. So if the wedding planner needs to buy 16 pounds of cheese, and the cheese is $2.15 per pound, how can we solve this problem? What equation would you write? Pause the video and try it out. All right, we have 16 pounds of cheese, and each pound costs $2.15. So we end up with 16 times $2.15. However, we also know that we are just estimating. We only need an about answer. So instead of multiplying this out, let's estimate. When estimating decimal products, sometimes you don't need to round both numbers. Here I have $2.15. Well, I can round that to the nearest whole number. So let's round my decimal to the nearest whole. $2.15 rounded to the nearest ones place will give me 2 and 0 hundredths, or just 2. Can we multiply 16 times 2 pretty easily? Go ahead and try it out. What is 16 times 2? Well, by counting by 2's, we can multiply 16 by 2 and get 32. So we can say, well, we would need about $32 to buy this cheese, 16 pounds worth of cheese. Our book has a couple other ways of solving this problem. Remember, with estimates, sometimes there are more than one way to get a correct answer. This estimate here tells us there's about $32 needed to buy this cheese. Let's take a look at another example. This next example is on the next page of our book. Manuel walks a total of 75 hundredths of a mile to and from school each day. If there have been 105 school days so far this year, about how many miles has he walked in all? Well, first of all, we have that key word again, about. We know that we are estimating. We know that he walks 75 hundredths of a mile each day, and he's walked for 105 days. What sign are we going to use? Multiplication. So let's look at how we would multiply this. We know that we are estimating, so thankfully we don't have to multiply it all out yet. To estimate this, I can think of two good ways to estimate. Remember that when estimating, sometimes there's more than one way to do it. Our first way could be to round this decimal number. Let's round it to the nearest whole. There's a 0 in the ones place and a 7 in the tenths place, so we could round that to 1 and 0 hundredths. Well, can we solve 1 times 105? I think we can. If we remember our identity property of multiplication, we remember that any number times 1 is just itself. So our first estimate could be that he's walked about 105 miles to school. Another way we could have solved this problem is by using what we did yesterday or earlier this week in our other math lesson. We have this same problem, 75 hundredths times 105. Instead of rounding the decimal, let's try rounding this number. 105 rounded to the greatest place value would round to 100. Can you remember the trick we did yesterday to multiply a decimal times a power of 10 like this number here? All we have to do is move our decimal point. We have 2 zeros, so I need to move my decimal point 2 places. So let's move that decimal 1 2 places to get 75. Both of these numbers are estimates, so clearly they're very different, but they are both about equal to the correct answer. My correct answer, or my exact answer, rather, would probably be somewhere between these two numbers. For an estimate, either of these are acceptable answers, because remember, an estimate is not an exact answer, it is about correct. Try a couple problems on your own. These problems are from your math book. They are numbers 3, 5, and 7. Go ahead and pause the video to try these problems. Remember, round one or both of your products and then multiply. Go ahead and try this out. Got your answers? Let's check them together. Remember that estimates are about answers, so your answer might not be quite the same as mine, but it should be pretty close. For this first problem, 0 and 87 hundredths times 112, I can think of solving this in two ways. However, I'm going to solve it with this 112. I notice that 112 rounds to 100. and I know how to multiply a decimal times 100. All I have to do is move that decimal point. So let's move that point 1, 2 places, 1, 2 places to get 87. So my estimate for this first problem would be about 87. You also could have opted to round this decimal to about 1 and then done 1 times 112 to get 112. Either estimate would be acceptable. Let's take a look at the next problem. 9 and 2/100 times 80. Hopefully you notice that this 9 and 2/100 can be easily rounded to just 9. When you're left with 9 times 80, we can use our zeros trick to solve that. 9 times 8 is 72 with 1 0 on our answer. So my answer would be about 720. For my last problem, I can do something similar. I have 33 and 5/100, which I can round to the greatest place, my tens, and say that this rounds to about 30. My next factor is 200, so it's already a really easy number to work with. I end up with 30 times 200. 3 times 2 gives us 6, plus 1, 2, 3 zeros. So 1, 2, 3 zeros. About 6,000. You're going to be trying some problems like this in your math for today. Good luck, everyone, and I'll see you around. Bye now.